Yes.
How many people here do not know who John Henry Clark is? Raise your hand. Be honest. Okay. Excellent. John Henry Clark is an ancestor, a warrior a scholar warrior who was born almost literally with a plowshare in his hand. He was born into that modern system of slavery called sharecropping that you're not supposed to get out of. When you're a sharecropper, your grandfather was usually a sharecropper, your grandmother was a sharecropper, your mother, your father, and it's expected that you're going to continue and so-called share. Amos Wilson taught us that in a system of white supremacy, if you want to know what something means, just turn the word upside down and backwards. If you say the justice system, that's the system to give you injustice. If you say the education system, that's the one to give you miseducation. If you say sharecropping, that's exactly the opposite of what it is. That's the take cropping, it's the exploit cropping. So it looks like it's a system where it sounds pretty good, it sounds very communal. A person with a big tract of land, he's going to give you a little plot of land, and you'll work your crops, and then at the end of the season, we'll share the profits. Only problem is, at the end of the season, he comes over, he says, Mose, remember when your wife got sick and I got that doctor for you? He said, yeah, well, that was this many dollars. He said, and remember when the plow broke and I got your new plow? Oh, yeah, well, that's this many. Well, look at here, you know what? After he finishes doing his telling, you actually owe me. And so you're locked in that system. But there were some people in Professor Clark's community who recognized his genius, and including elementary school teachers, and they made sure that he got out of there. And anyway, he came up, he tells the story of how he looked for Arthur Schomburg. No, I'm not talking about the Passover or anything like that. I'm talking about an African man of Caribbean origin, Puerto Rico specifically, with a German name. That's how Professor Clark described him. And he was one of the early curators at the Schomburg Museum. Arthur Schomburg had so many books that the New York City library system used to borrow his books. So that library up on 135th Street, this is a black man. Professor Clark found his way to him and told him what he was looking for, and Dr. Schomburg showed him how to go get it, because Dr. Clark had read one of his essays, and sent Dr. Clark to study and master world history, especially the missing part of world history, which is our history. Professor Clark did that to the extreme. He wasn't just an armchair scholar, he was an activist. It was always nice as his student to look, and you would see old editions of the Negro world, which later became the black world, and you would see Professor Clark's role in early struggles for justice for our people, justice and liberation here. So that's who Professor Clark was in a very small nutshell. That's a part of who he is. He was an international person. He was a person who traveled to Africa, who spoke to people like Kwame Nkrumah and other giants, and who just was like a human encyclopedia. He just had so much information in his head. When I first met Professor Clark at Hunter College, if you said something to him, he would tell you, oh, well, what you need to read is Count Arthur Volney. And he would tell you the book, he would tell you the page, just about the paragraph. And then a student, a person that some people would consider insignificant, the next day he would see you in the hallway and give you a Xerox of those pages he told you to read. He was a master teacher, he was a master psychiatrist. I mean, he's not known as a psychiatrist. He didn't have any degrees as a psychiatrist, but he knew how to mentor people. He knew how to repair our people emotionally. And he knew how to confront our enemy in a meaningful way. So this is the house. Because of all of the work that he did, some people got together. They wanted to form a group which lobbied on behalf of African people the way that other groups lobby on behalf of their children in the realm of education. The original purpose of the organization, the Board for the Education of People of African Ancestry, was to influence educational policy at the state level. You might want to do something more independent, but the majority of our children are going to be in these public schools. Somebody, Dr. Adelaide Sanford, who was the founder of this place, felt she was there doing it single-handedly as a lone regent, fighting by herself. She realized she needed a lobbying kind of organization to assist. So without being a member, she put a bug in a few people's ears, and the board was founded. Very soon after that, this building was purchased, and all kinds of programs have been here to help parents, to help students. There have been summer programs here. There was 1 year where youngsters were coached in math, and at the same time they were taught the Medu Netra. That was Joe Mack did that many years ago. So we have, this building has a history. That chair there is a chair that Dr. Clark has actually sat in a lecture series called Sitting at the Feet of the Elders. So you're in a historic place, and it's your place. This is a place for your community. We are honored today. We've had many, many greats pass through here. We've had Dr. Amos Wilson. We've had Dr. Yosef Ben Yakin. We've had Dr. Malefi Asante. We've had Dr. James Conyers. We've had all kinds of greats that have come through here, and none of them greater than the person we have today. She's modest, so she looked shocked when I said that. But I've seen, I remember I saw her book, Urugu, and I read some of it and whatnot. I said, this is the most important book in the 20th century. But I heard some scholars online saying it was one of the 10 most important books ever written. She is a person who came through that educational system and did that thing they don't want you to do. When white people teach you business, they don't want you to do business with them the way they do business with your people. They want you to do business with your people the way they do business. But she does business with them. She analyzes them. She breaks them down. She dissects them. You know, they like to cut stuff up, right? So she dissects them. And we're just so happy to have her here. There's no point in going through her degree. She has all of, I said this the other day about myself, she has all the bourgeois credentials. You know, she got the doctorate. She was the head of a sequence at a department in the City University at Hunter College. She has lectured all over the world. And she's very well respected, and we're so happy to have her here. Please welcome to the microphone, Dr. Marimba Ani. You don't have to, you can leave your chair over here.
I don't want to sit. Well, Darcy, thank you, James. Thank you so much, Dr. McIntosh. This is family for me. This is home for me. Harlem is home for me, so it's wonderful to be here. And Dr. McIntosh, he talked about who, we called him Professor Clark, is, even more than that. He's my ideological father. He was like that for James McIntosh, Dr. McIntosh. He was really like that also for Dr. James Conyers here. So there are many of us who are actually connected through, we call him Nana Clark, because that's a term of great respect in Africa. So to be here and then for under the leadership, is this on? I'm hoping that this is working, Jane. Okay. Under the leadership of Mother, Sister Mother, Adelaide Sanford, for her to have kind of engineered having this place, this brownstone, this is a home, in Nana Clark's honor is just, for me, it's you know, it's very meaningful. And I feel it inside, and being here, he does live here. He lives here as well as a few other places, probably, that are very important. We had the great privilege of putting out the word and getting people to help make a, what would we call it, commission a bust to be made of him And there was a Nigerian artist in Atlanta, and he made it, and I had the privilege of actually taking that bus to Ghana. So he also lives there. Very well known in Africa, Nana Clark, very well known, and especially Ghana, but also Nigeria. And
was the bus left, in what facility?
it was taken to a shrine house, so to speak, in Kumasi, in Ghana, and so it's still there. And I can give people information if you are traveling. A lot of people are traveling to Ghana. You need to go and see it. And Nana Abbas was the priest who I'm close to there, a Khan in the system, a Khan system, who is the custodian of Nana Clark's shrine or altar there. So all of this is about, well, who Nana Clark is to me is extremely important. He is the person who is, I'm still learning from him, let me put it that way. And he took me under his wing. He kidnapped me. I was supposed to go to Ostos and teach, and I don't even know if I had a contract, but at least there was a letter and all of that. And he said, what are you going to do now? Because I was just finishing graduate school, and I said, well, I'm going to Ostos. They asked me, and I went there, and we set everything up. And he said, He said, you're not going there. I said, okay, Dr. Clark, Professor Clark. I didn't know what to do. He said, no, you're coming to Hunter. And that's the way he was. When there was something that he knew it should happen, he made it happen. And that I ended up at Hunter for 25 years, but I had the privilege of teaching with him and being in his classes, watching him teach. And then we had my real education was through him. Okay, that's what you have to understand. Go to these schools, you get these degrees, but you got to understand that's not where you're really being educated. Being educated at these different places that we find like this. And John Henrik Clark was a premier educator for young Africans who were growing in African-centeredness. And I want to say, I talk to him. I pour libation to him every day. I have an altar to him. But the wonderful thing is that I'll say literally, I'm not figuratively, I am still learning from him. It's amazing to me. And I'll come up with this idea and I'll say, that's exactly what he said. But I didn't realize at the time fully and deeply what he was saying. So that's like an introduction to what we are going to be talking about today. Is one of the things that Dr. McIntosh did was he was talking about me, and he was talking about those of us who we go to their schools, but then we turn their stuff around and we look at them, okay? Dr. Frances Cress Welsing is an incredible example of having done that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we become those that they cannot control, nor could they predict what we would do, okay? Unfortunately, there aren't a whole lot of us, but there are some, and those that has to grow in terms of who we can then touch. She's an incredible example of having done that. And that's a little bit of what we want to talk about today. Now I'm going to need your help, your thinking. One of the things that she is doing is telling us that we got to think. I don't know to what extent, thank you, James. I don't know to what extent we watch that. How many people have read any of the ISIS papers? Put your hands up if you have. How many people have read chapter 2? Got a hand over here, okay? Chapter 3. Put your hand up if you've read the chapter 3, I think is the one on unified field theory. Chapter 2, I think, is the one on anxiety, alienation, and narcissism. And then the ones like 22 and around in there, she talks about black children. She talks about also the process of inferiorization. How many people have read about that? Okay, that's one of the things I want to talk about, or let's keep in mind, okay, because I don't have to keep harping on it. But I see partly my role to be that to kind of pull our coattails is that we got stuck on one aspect of her work. And we didn't look at all the other stuff that she did. So let's try to touch on that a bit today, because the importance of her work really goes beyond just chapter 1. And I remember how we used to kind of pass around that little pamphlet of the crest theory, and that was what, 77 or around in there somewhere. You probably, how old are you?
36.
No, I'm talking 36. About you. 36. So when were you born?
When was I born?
Yes, when were you born?
11/8/79.
In 79?
Right.
Okay, so you don't even know what we're talking about. And that's wonderful. But in the late 70s, we had this thing we were passing around, this little black and white little pamphlet, and it was blowing people's minds, right? And then we were waiting there was talk of this book that was going to be, and we were anxiously awaiting for that. And that didn't happen until 91, I believe. If anybody knows more, correct me. So the ISIS papers came out then, and then it had the crest theory of color confrontation in it, but it had a whole lot more in it. And I found, we did a conference on Dr. Welsing in Tallahassee at FAMU 2 years ago. And in preparation, it was wonderful because she was there. And I'll tell you later some of the things that she said. But in preparing for that, I had to go back and look at the book. And I'm studying this and I'm saying, did I read this before? You know, it does that to you. And I think you should reread anything of Dr. Clark's. Anything of, books. Oh, I know one. I know one. Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilization is a masterpiece, and it's instructive. Okay? Instructive and prescriptive, and therefore we need to be using it. And I feel the same way about Dr. Welsing's work. So these are things that I've gone back and studied. And you need to keep doing that, because it's one thing to kind of, read something, you kind of read it lightly, or you go over to skim the top. But these books need to be studied. They need to be studied, and they need to be reread and reread, okay? Because what the people are offering us are things that we need to use. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing has given us things that are practical that we need to be using, okay? And so bear with me as I try to give you an idea of that today. And if you want to help me at all, you can do that too. All right, so having said that, I want to really thank BEPA for bringing me here, for providing a place where the community can come and learn and listen and learn together, and we can teach each other. And I am most certainly reminded of First World Alliance. and Brother Brian is here today, saw him, where a lot of us used to go, used to be, and our great mother Kefa, Mother Kefa, who has recently made her transition. But there was a collective of people who carried on the lecture series of First World Alliance, and that lecture series, I don't know if you all know this, but was like almost like the grandmother of lecture series in this nation among black people throughout the country, and a lot of it was because of the work of Brother Yusuf, who I used to be mad at. Remember Yusuf? He would tape. I know what he used to do, but anyway, we'll talk about that later. But the tapes would get out everywhere. And as people would be inspired to start their own lecture series and to read some of the people that were at First World that we used to go to every Saturday. So this is part of that tradition. Okay, let me get started now. And I need y'all to stay with me. Those of you who are students, like I see this brother there, have your notes out ready, to your paper and pen. Okay? That I think is very important. I think that's all I want to say by way of introduction. There will be a notebook coming around that'll be from me, where I want you to put your email addresses if you want to be on the list that I send out to, because I have a paper that I've written on Dr. Welsing that I would like for you to see. And I will send it to you if I have your email address. So it'll be coming around. Sister Jackie, you can start that list. Okay. Nana Frances Cress Welsing, she begins, let's begin with her just taking control of the battlefield by defining the term racism in terms of white supremacy. Okay? Now, that's important. I'm going to be talking now about her method and her approach to a limited degree. Obviously, I can't do it. There was so much to do. But that's what I want us to look at now and what we can get out of that. Okay? But when you are in battle, one needs to take control of the battlefield. You understand that? And that's what she was doing. So she begins by identifying and defining the enemy. We have problems with that. We have problems thinking in terms of an enemy. We use the term loosely, some of us sometimes, war, and we will say we're at war. That is not true. We are being warred against, but when you cannot be at war if you have not even acknowledged that you have an enemy. That's what war is about. It's about fighting an enemy. And it's about fighting because if you don't, you get killed. You're gonna be offed. Okay? So what you do is you are defending yourself and you are looking to neutralize the enemy. We have difficulty talking in those terms, y'all. This isn't about talk. It isn't about protest, even. It's got to be beyond that. If we really are thinking in terms of war, and we haven't been, we as a people, I think, have difficulty thinking in terms of war. However, the system of white supremacy is a war against African people and black people. So they set up their system to do this, and then we have just thought of ourselves in terms of being victims And sometimes not even that, you see? But definitely not thinking of ourselves as going toe-to-toe, as confronting that, and we should be an enemy of theirs. That's what war is about. Sound a little difficult for you, huh? You don't want to be anybody's enemy. Yeah, we need to be the enemy of the racist white supremacists, okay? So she's setting us up for confrontation in a way that we can win, okay? And I'm going to kind of show you a bit how she does that. So she takes control of the discussion by defining what racism is. And I wanted to show in the black bag the book, Neely Fuller's book, that I need to study. And that's what I'm going to do when I go back to Atlanta. I'm going to begin studying that book. Yeah. He talks about compensatory, the law of, I can't get to that.
Compensatory emergency judgment.
All of that. All right. And I'm looking at that, and it's like blowing my mind, but it blew the mind of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. Now, this was a person, he didn't go and get them degrees in the school and all of that, but was obviously brilliant, okay? So she is inspired by that and using that and develops her theories out of that inspiration. This is the book, Neely Fuller's book. You need to get and study. And I'm telling you, I'm giving you, this assignment, I'm giving it to me. I need to study this, okay? And study means study. You write your notes from it, you underline it, you do all of that stuff. Hold on, let me change. All right, let's look at what she does. So what I want to do now is to look at her method and her approach. She takes control of the discussion, not only by defining racism, but she talks in terms of their pathology. Got that? Pathology is what? Illness, disease. So she sees that as a disease, the system of white supremacy, okay? Now, she says that this comes from the fact of their genetic inadequacy. Got that? In Yurugu, I talk about their lack of wholeness, okay? They are powerless, and therefore they have to seek power. So they create a structure in which they become powerful. She says that it's the same thing. I just want to show you the relationship, okay? Slightly different. She says that they are inferior genetically. Now, to skip ahead and go all around, I won't try to do this in any kind of linear way, but that should be kind of obvious. You know why? You know what percentage of the world's people are white people?
8%.
8%. Growing up, and even now, if I ask children, they'll make guesses, but I thought they were the majority of the people in the world. Did anybody else think that ever? When you did too, as young as you are. How are they able to achieve that? That's amazing.
Media.
That's amazing.
Good public relations, yeah.
Okay, good public relations, media, writing the textbooks, doing the teaching, controlling the schools. Huh?
As Dr. Clark would say, colonizing the mind.
Colonizing the mind. All of these things, the image of God, all of these things. This is what has we'll get to this, but Dr. Welsing says has a single unitary law. That's what she's looking for, and all of this can be explained by understanding the system of white supremacy. And Did they do a good job? Okay? They at one point it was 10%, I remember. Now it's 8%. It's getting smaller, you all. Reason for that? Genetic inadequacy, okay? And a whole lot of other things that go along with it. So, what they do then is to the compensatory law that Fuller would be talking about. You construct this system where you're kind of substituting for that. And she talks about reaction formation. These are terms that Dr. McIntosh can talk about with you. You make him do that as a follow-up, to all of this. Where they are substituting a different kind of power for the power that they lack genetically. Got it? Everybody with me? So what we want to do is to follow how she was thinking and was getting us to think. Okay, so they construct this thing to make up for this feeling of inadequacy. Now, if you're feeling inadequate, if you're feeling inferior, right? And you're this small minority, and then there are all these other people, and then they got melanin, right? And which gives them power, which he talks about as well. And definitely gives them genetic power. Okay? How would you feel? What are the emotions that you would have? What's the first emotion that you would have? Think about it. Who said what? What?
Fear.
I can't hear that.
Fear.
Fear. Fear is the key. And she said it is their fear. They afraid they ain't gonna exist anymore, y'all. Really, that's what she talks about. She talks about genetic annihilation. So then what they did was they've got to compensate for that. And you know what they did, which we will get to later, is that they transferred that fear to us. Okay, they still got it, but they found a way, you see, to make us be afraid because they constructed their own power system. And by the way, one of the things that I'm arguing in Yurugu is that they don't really have any power unless we do what? We give it to them. Okay? All right. Now, one of the things that she does, she's so bold, is that she critiques the discipline that she was trained in. You got me? She critiques psychiatry. She says that what has to happen in order to really understand disease, pathology, in order to heal, is that you've got to make order out of chaos. So she's looking for that thing that can help you see something as a whole, as opposed to things that are disconnected and you can't understand that. She's saying there's a way to understand it as a whole, and that's what's going to help us to do something about it, if we could really understand it, to make sense of it. Okay, so if you're studying a disease, you need to understand what it is. That's what she's talking about. When I did Yurugu, same thing, is that people were saying, you can't study European culture. You can't study European cultural thought and behavior. You know why? It's too complex. That's what they said. Got all this different stuff going on. It's just too much complex. You can't study. How can you do that? Okay? So what I needed was an approach and a concept which would allow me to see the unity and all of that stuff that seemed to be different and disparate. Anybody know what that concept was that I came up with? Yasili. Thank you. So the Asili was the core. It was the logos of the culture. It was the thing that made sense of everything. She's saying we need to do the same thing with regard to psychiatry, with regard to specifically studying white supremacy. Everybody with me? So she is critical of psychiatry as she was taught it because it's not doing that. So it doesn't really give you, it can't really help you. It can't really give you the tools that you need in order to dissect, to understand, in this case, the enemy. So she's arguing and she's looking for how do we make sense of the phenomenon in a systematic way. She's looking for system, y'all, which was very important that she gave us, is to understand racism, white supremacy as a system. It's a very important contribution of Frances Cress Welsing. Now, let me just throw this out to critique us, because if you know anything about me and my work, what I'm doing always is pushing me and pushing us to grow. It's not enough, 9 o'clock would want that. It's like, it's not enough for us to just talk about the great things that he did and what he said in his books or whatever, if we're not doing anything with it. So it's up to specifically to young people to take that and grow with it and grow us with it. You see what I'm saying? Otherwise, it's just words and you're just kind of stuck. Okay, she has a problem with us being stuck. Okay, and I'm putting it out there to we Pan-Africanists, which probably most of you would consider yourselves, is that we have not produced a systematic analysis of our situation and of the enemy. A systematic analysis. If you ask anybody what, you could ask 50 people what is Pan-Africanism, you get 50 different answers. But basically it's not enough to say that all African people should be united. What does that give us? Okay, what does it give the young people who really are ready to do what 9 o'clock talked about, which was make African world revolution? We're talking serious stuff here. We're talking changing the world. Then you got to give tools to make that happen. Okay? That's what she is attempting to give us. Her theoretical perspective was changing the way we approach the problem. She's taken with what Einstein was attempting to do in physics. What was he attempting to do? Bring about a unified field theory, or a unified theory, the relativity theory and so forth, which was to try to find, you're trying to find a law that will explain all these different phenomena. Now that's bold, it's a bold thing to do. He's talking about energy, he's in physics. She's really, turned on by that. She's saying that's what we need to do. And my brother here, Dr. James Conyers, is saying that unified field theory was called for by Neely Fuller as well. Okay, so she's getting influenced by Neely Fuller as well. So what she's saying is we got to apply that in terms of studying human behavior, more specifically the behavior of these white races. Okay, of the enemy. Not get confused by what seems to be all this different stuff. She's saying psychiatry, use psychiatry, and psychiatry needs to be thinking in terms of looking for this unitary law. Okay? And so what I like is that how she uses physics or some models out of physics, and she's saying we can use that here when you're talking about human behavior. No problem in doing that. A lot of people wouldn't do that. Most people wouldn't, because that's not how they were trained. You see? That's what the academy does. It really stops you from thinking. It doesn't encourage you in thinking. Okay? So she's looking to do that. What I like also, though, is that she's looking at human behavior in terms of energy systems. She calls them behavior energy systems. She calls cultures behavior energy systems. So that allows her then to apply these theories, methods, and so forth that you might just think of in terms of physics, if you were into that, to human behavior and to us studying about white racism. She is looking for a unitary law or code. That is what I meant by Yasili. The code. You can find the code of something, the code of a system. Then guess what? You can break that code or you can decode it. You see? So she is looking to help us understand, and she herself is explaining how racism, white supremacy works, so then we can look at how does it work on us. You see what I'm saying? And instead of just seeing one thing, my child, the teacher in school, makes him feel bad about himself. We've got police who are doing the brutality over here. I can't get a job, or I'm fired from a job because of how I look, or something. All of these things, she shows that they have one cause. And it's the cause that you have to look at. She said that is what it means to be scientific. Don't think that you have to be in the laboratory and do all that to be, and we think of science over there and we're over here. No, we are being scientific when we think like this about our situation and about what we have to do and about African World Revolution and all of that. We got to be scientific. You've got to look at the cause, and she's looking at what is the single cause that then the other stuff comes out of. Y'all with me? Yes. I feel like, okay, I want you to stay here and I want you to work. This is your work as well as mine, okay? So she's looking to discover that unitary war, and to those who say it's too complex, she's arguing against them. You got that? You can see that on page 42, put that down. And she says that any finite energy system, no matter how seemingly complex, has a unitary law that can be determined. Why? Because there is order to any given energy system. Now, I'm saying this to you because you need to understand, people really admire Dr. Welsing. To anybody of us would say she was great, and it's great that she came here, the work and all of that. But I want you to know she really was. I want you to know it goes beyond the way in which we have been thinking. She was brilliant. Brilliant. And took them on at their core. And kept taking them on. Kept taking them on. Okay? She came up with some suggestions for how we should rework this thing we call psychiatry, and how we should rework our movement and our lives and so forth. And I'm gonna speak on them. I'll mention them in a minute. I want to do something else first. It is important that we put her work into historical context. Okay? How many people have seen her, I don't know what you call it. It definitely was not a debate, but whatever that thing was with Shockley.
It's on YouTube, yeah.
How many people? Put your hands up. Okay, how many have not seen it? Ah, okay, good. Go, you can see it on YouTube. You can see it on the net. Put in, it was on Tony Brown's journal, and it was 1974. So everybody do that, please, okay? That was my first introduction to her. Blew me away. And influenced me greatly, okay? And I want to say a bit about the significance of that. Those of us who have seen it, it's her, you know, she's on one side. And by the way, anybody notice the color of her sweater that she had on?
Red, black, and green.
It's red, black, and green. That was said to me, who said that? S.C. Ramu said that to me. I had never noticed that before, okay? You think that was accidental? No. I don't think so. I don't think so, okay? Now, I never heard her mention Garvey, but that's an incredible connection. And by the way, next time I come, I'm going to talk about Garvey, all right? But at any rate, we see that and we like it. Do you remember why? Those of you who did, anybody, and especially did anybody see it in 74? That's when I saw it. 1974, he was not even born. And probably a whole lot of people here, or at least a number of people, at least what, 20, 25 people, were not born in 1974. So we were here. We put on our TV, it was channel 13. I remember when we used to have those channels, right? and there she was. And it was like nothing we had ever seen. It was revolutionary back in the day. Here you had this woman, black woman who represented us, taking on this guy, okay? But now I'm going to put it into historical perspective. And that's even more than that. It's more than that, okay? That guy's name was Shockley. Shockley was really representing a movement among white people. A movement that actually controls global order now in the planet, the financial order, right? Heru? Which then means cultural, educational, I mean, you name it. All of that stuff is controlled by the movement that he was representing at that time. Now, we didn't know that unless some of you were really, really knowledgeable and you knew it, okay? But I find that people don't know it now and that we need to. And so let me share with you a little bit. 1789. I may have to look at some notes to remember some of these dates, but 1789, you have a person named Robert Thomas R. Malthus. Stay with me, James, okay? Malthus, M-A-L-T-H-U-S, and you can find it on all of this stuff you can find in books. I remembered the name from when I was in high school or something. I was saying, wait a second, there's this guy. And he talked about such and such. Let me go back and look at it. Now this was not connected to Dr. Welsing at the time. It's just where I have been going with my work and leadership in the African sovereignty movement, okay? Was taking me there. What did Malthus say? He said, he had a book called The Principle of Population. And he said that the population, human population, was growing at this incredible rate. Now, he says this in 1789. And in fact, he says geometrically. So anybody who knows something about math knows that that's a lot. That's like rapid growth, right? Okay. He says, however, what sustains that population, which is what? We got to eat, right? It's food. He said, is only the ability to grow that food and cultivate that food and all of that is only progressing at an arithmetic, well, I guess you'd call that arithmetic progression, okay? Which is much less.
Lineal.
Lineal, okay. So it's lineal, Dr. Kanyas says here. Got it? So what is he doing by doing that? He's setting up this thing. And by the way, because it was tremendously influential, okay, on white life, thought, behavior, and so forth. Setting up this thing where, oh my gosh, you're going to have all these people, you're not going to have enough food for them. Well, from an African perspective, that is really kind of crazy. But that's not how people regarded it. How do you think they regarded it?
Fear.
Fear. There you go with the fear. All right? Then you get Galt. So he's talking the population thing, right? But it's connected to something else, which is really all the same thing, and we have not realized it. And then you get this guy, Francis Galton, Galton, and I think his date would be 1869, that he comes out with this book called Hereditary Genius. Galton is a cousin of Darwin. Darwin is saying, you know, if you survive, that's great, because you're supposed to survive because you're the fittest, you know? So Galton's work is very interesting. If you remember back to when you were in school and you got Mendel, and you got Mendel with peas and all of that, and what he's trying to do is to show genetics.
Yeah.
Got it? That's what Mendel did.
Gregor Mendel.
Well, Gregor Mendel, okay. Galton is doing the same thing, or thinks he's doing the same thing with people. Got it? And certain traits in people. Y'all follow where I'm going now, okay? He actually studied or it says that he did, a group of people in London, okay? The elite, most educated, quote unquote, white people in England, right? He is to see their breeding habits and all that kind of stuff. So he's doing with those people what Mendel was doing with the peas. He comes up with this prescription, or, you know, saying what should happen, saying that the people with desired traits, you with me, should reproduce more. You got it? And what about the people with the undesirable traits? What should they do? They shouldn't have babies. They should disappear is what he's really saying, right? Okay. You know what that was called?
Eugenics.
Yes, eugenics. The U-E-U is good in the Greek. Good genes. It's a movement for the good genes. Yeah, and they would talk about bettering the race, meaning the human race, and so forth and so on. You got it? Has everybody got it? Now, if you couple that with what Malthus was doing in terms of population, then you use Dr. Welsing's analysis telling us what racism, white supremacy is, telling us the nature of them, of their inferiority, their inadequacy, and their fear, and then we look at their numbers, then how do you interpret what Galton was really saying? Do I have to repeat that? Y'all can't be shy in here either. This has got to be like a class, you know, for me. Let me say it again. You get that? That's what they're trying to do. And their fear is, we don't have problems reproducing. I'm going to repeat that. No, I'm very serious because that's very important. And we don't want to lose it either, okay? We don't have problems reproducing. They got problems. Why do you think they're only 8% of the world's people?
Right.
You got it?
Yeah.
So then these eugenicists have got to find the ways that promote them to have the babies. And to kill us having babies. And do you know what part, this whole movement, the eugenics movement, they had different laws for sterilization. I was going to skip, well, I'll come back to that. And you wanted to say something? Did you want to say?
No, I was going to say, and to level it out, they have to, yeah, because often part of the way is possibly, no, through the food. I'm not going to even say possibly. Just things that are available to us. And
no, but also the things, if you think they're doing some good for you with food. What about vaccines, which I'm going to come to later on? Okay? They have to find ways to destroy us, y'all. Just look. Let's just say it like it is. Okay? Is that any way they can, they will try to get rid of black melanated people. Why?
Because they're recessive. They're Neanderthals. They are the genetic archaics. They still be removed.
All of those, that may be true. That's not the basic answer.
because we're the enemy. We're the enemy.
They are the enemy because of what they want to do to us. Why would they want to get rid of all of us?
Disappearing.
Because what?
They're disappearing.
Because they're disappearing.
Right, zero birth rate.
Okay, so therefore,
They're scared.
therefore,
We're
huh?
the strongest ones to make them disappear.
Say it again.
We are the strongest people to make them disappear.
We are the danger. Their survival, get this down everybody, their survival depends on our demise. Their survival depends on our demise. It's that simple. It's like Neely Fuller saying, once you understand that, you know, and I remember a quote one time from Sister Francis. She said, every morning, as a black person, you need to look in the mirror and say, before you step out that door, because when you step out that door, you are stepping into the world of, or the order of white supremacy. You need to say, that is in their minds. These people are a threat to my existence. Therefore, what do? They know we're the enemy. You see what I'm saying? And they know our power. And we don't. We have the power to destroy them. That's how they think. You see what I'm saying? So that means that they're looking for every kind of way to do that. So what you know of as the World Health Organization actually is an agency that goes throughout the world, and they will do whatever to destroy African people, and are doing it, and are sterilizing African women. Now, I'm not a what do you call it, conspiracy theory that ain't me. So if I tell you something, then it's because I really have reason to believe it, or I've seen it, or whatever, and you need to go check it out. You got that? This is real. We're not selling wolf tickets here. But what I want you to see, okay, so let me keep going with this. Okay, I'll just say some names. So then you get a guy named Cyril Burt, B-U-R-T, if you want to look him up. In 1926, you get Margaret Sanger. Anybody know who she is? Oh, people know her. That's very good, very important. They come out when this guy named Vogt, V-O-G-T. He writes this book. And some of the titles of these things you wouldn't believe. But they come up with a sterilization bonus plan. What they're going to give you if you will sterilize yourself. That's us, right? Okay. Then you get Jensen and Shockley. Now 1926 is Sanger, okay? 1969, you get Jensen. Jensen says, one of the things he says is 70 or more illegitimate, Negro babies are born per day with genetic potential for IQ below 75. You got that? In other words, you can predict that these babies are going to have an IQ of 75, which is low, by the way, in their system, which I want to touch on. You got it? There is an organization called Race Betterment Foundation. You hear that? Race Betterment Foundation. Obviously, this is all eugenics. Okay? But you get people like Oliver Wendell Holmes, Louis Brandeis, these people on the Supreme Court, justices who people consider to be liberals and so forth. They are influenced by these ideas. So they may not be the people coming out and saying the same things like Jensen would say, but that they believe in them, or at least they're influenced by them. They accept them. That's very important for us to understand, okay? So this is like a given among white people, is that almost all the leaders accepted eugenics and eugenics thinking, okay? So you get Jensen coming out with, he has a paper, and I don't have the name right here, in '69 that everybody kind of latches onto, and they start this thing called Jensenism. Jensen is a person who is a eugenicist, who is talking about the inferiority of black people. Now look at what's happened there. Dr. McIntosh talks about reversing. If you hear something, then you reverse it.
Yes.
But that's what they did, okay? Is that they feel powerless, they feel inferior, they know what their problems are in terms of world population, so they construct a system which reverses that. I can't repeat that too many times. So then you get out of that this whole concept of intelligence quotient. All right? You got to look at, that's why the silly concept is important, because you got to look at why would they say the things that they say? What does it really mean when they say things? Not the rhetoric of it. You understand? Not just the sound of the words, but what does it really mean? Because they're going to get you with that rhetorical ethic thing, where they say one thing, but they mean something else, okay? What is IQ? What does it stand for? Quotient. Now, quotient, to me, it sounds like a mathematical term, is it? As a term, it's about, what's that about?
Division. Division.
Okay. Right. Very good. But what is intelligent quotient about? What is it about? Measurement. What are you measuring?
How much you know about the world?
Yeah. Wait a second. So you're measuring intelligence. So I got to ask you something. To measure something, I mean, don't you have to like have it or something? I mean, I'm not a scientist now. But where is the intelligence? Where is that? And what does it look like?
What's the reference point?
How are you going to measure a reference? You're asking me.
No, I'm just saying.
You're saying
if
we
you're gonna
need to
measure
know.
something, You need some type of reference point, like who. They define,
More than the reference point,
it.
that's it. You
They
got to say
defined it.
what it is,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, they defined it.
There are controversies about what intelligence is, by the way, okay? But to me, if you're actually measuring it, don't you have to be able to see it or have it come up on some kind of I don't know. Something. You know how they have these waves and that kind of, then all of this kind of, so what, you know.
Definitely can't be standardized.
Huh?
Definitely can't be standardized.
Well, my first thing is, how you defining this thing like the sister says here, okay? The other thing is, why you need to measure it, okay? And is it something that can be measured? Is it, do we say, okay, you know more vocabulary words than Sister Jackie, so you got more intelligence. You got it? So then I give is very important. But I want you to see why do it, and how do you think it was used? Okay, yes.
I think it's something that they can control.
Obviously. Good.
They can determine.
They can determine everything. You see, what you're doing is, that's their ball game, y'all. So they're defining everything in there. So what we did, and still do a bit, is, what do we want to say?
What I want to say?
What do we do with regard to that? And then I'll ask you. Go ahead. Come on.
I just feel like it doesn't matter. Does it?
Thank you. Thank you. But that's not what we were doing. Okay? What we were doing was feeling like you do when you go in the classroom with the white teacher. Okay, or you read those textbooks and stuff. You feel like, okay, this is true, this is universal, this is objective, they're the smart ones, so they're telling us that. So therefore, what we need to do is show how our IQs are as high as their IQs. You got it? Once you do that, you're in their arena. They got the control. Okay? But now we know this movement, this eugenics movement, right? That we're going to know more about, right? And so we know, hey, they're using this. They're using the IQ thing. It fits their thing perfectly. And that's what Jensen and Shockley were doing. That's what they came out of. That's the history, the background. Now, why did I go into all of this? Well, number one, because I think we need to know it, okay? We need to know this because of the work that we got to do now, the political organizing that we have to do, right? But you also need to know it to know that when that beautiful sister with the red, black, and green sweater on sat there in that TV studio and faced off with that person, Shockley, who turned, I mean, he was feeble. Was he not feeble? I mean, anybody who's seen it. She was really taking on centuries of white supremacy, the structure of white supremacy. And we didn't know it. She was taking that on. She was turning the table. She was looking at them, talking about them as being ill, and saying, that's why you have this concept even. It's because of your illness and your fear. So if you're saying to me all the time, let's say you keep saying, okay, your IQ is low, your IQ is low, and I say to you, you know why you're saying that? Because you're really sick. But you're sick racially, you're sick. And then she had the nerve to talk about it in genetic terms. Here you had a black woman, an African woman, warrior, talking to the whole white world and their ancestors, going back all the way to Malthus, okay, and saying, y'all are genetically inferior and therefore this is what you do. This is the basis of your behavior. He couldn't handle that. He sure didn't know what to do with it. But I want us to know what she was doing, what she was taking on, what she was doing. She has this chapter 3, where she talks about alienation, anxiety, and narcissism. And one of the things that she does, now alienation is when you are separated in a way that's like painful, and you can't get back to that, to yourself, or to what you need to be with or close to. And Dr. McIntosh can define that in a much better way. But alienation is something which is endemic, she's saying, to white culture, white society. Where does it begin? With alienation from the self. They are alienated from themselves. Why? They hate themselves. That she uses as a primary cause for white behavior, for racist behavior, is self-hatred. You got that? This is a totally different way of looking at all of that stuff. You know how they used to talk about racism before her, and we should never let it go back to where it was before her. They would talk about so-called prejudice and how you felt about people. And so all the liberals would want people to come together and they could love each other and not feel badly about each other. She takes it to a whole nother level and says it comes out of it's one of the manifestations, this alienation, the anxiety that you feel, the fear that they feel, the narcissism, unable to give back emotions and love. All of those things, she said, come from this one cause, and the cause is the genetic inadequacy and your response to that, the genetic inferiority and your need to compensate for that. You got it? Yes. That's the power in what she was doing. And I think what I'm going to do now, because I could go on forever. And Dr. McIntosh, you didn't tell me how long I have.
So you finished.
Yeah.
That's what he said when I'm finished? Okay, we'll wait just 1 second. Yeah, let me put on the method. This one. Yes. And then I'll also use some of my notes, but this will give you something to look at. And really what it says is some aspects of the work of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. There are 2 terms that she used. She actually wanted to affect psychiatry, okay, and certainly for us to use it. So she talks about counter-racist psychiatry, and she also talks about unified field psychiatry. Is that correct? Okay, let's go. Did everybody get that? Okay.
Go back. It's good.
Anybody want to go back to just get those names? Yes. Go back for one. Yeah. Okay, so you can take that down. Everybody in other rooms, you can hear counter-racist psychiatry. She talks about it in her book. She has chapters on it and explains what it should be doing. Unified field psychiatry. Got that? Those in other rooms? Let's go on. All right, a quote. I'm going to do a series of quotes to help, and then we can discuss them and you can ask questions. She is, remember I said before, she's looking for a unitary law. Okay? That means one law that you can use to explain both the cause and the workings of white supremacy system, racism, white supremacy. Clear? Everybody? Okay. The present confusion, you see, that's part of our problem. So we can't study that. It's too confusing. We can't understand it. She's saying, yeah, we can understand it. It's largely a result of our failure to see the interconnections that exist between many seemingly isolated, disconnected behavior energy phenomena, that just means something that happens, in Western culture. For a second, I want to look at that interconnections. She talks about interconnectedness. She is advising us that we need to look for interconnectedness. She also talks about interrelationship. She doesn't have it in this quote, but she talks about that. You got to see how these things relate. What relates them is one law. You look for the thing that relates all these seemingly isolated things. She said they're not really isolated. She even has a thing, if you look on page 22. Anybody have the book with them? Anyway, look on that page. There's a diagram, and it's like a cone that comes down. And at the top of the cone, you see these things that are sparse. You know, they're all over the place. But as the cone comes down, they get closer and closer and closer till at the bottom of the cone, you end up with just a one. It's a dot, a black dot, right? And what she's showing that if you go deep enough, what do you find? You come to the core. She's always looking for the core. Everybody with me? So what we're looking at now is her method and her approach. They won't be disconnected anymore. Why? Because we found the unitary law. Any questions? Next one. Her thesis. The global behavior patterns of racism are a survival necessity for the white collective. They are doing what they have to do in order to survive, guess what? As white. You know? Otherwise, they would just identify with everybody else and just become part of what everybody else is or something like that. They don't want to do that. Which is cool with me, by the way. Okay. They want to be white. That's what she said. Identify as white. But in order to survive, they got to create this system, which is racism, white supremacy. Everybody there? Okay. This racist activity is a compensatory. You're making up for stuff. Compensatory, making up for stuff you don't have. Right, James? Mm-hmm. Okay. It's a compensatory attempt to prevent white genetic annihilation. They know that they will be annihilated genetically. Why? Because they are recessive, because they're weak. You got it? On a planet where the vast majority of people are what? Genetically dominant. Okay? We are genetically dominant to the melanin deficient whites. So there should be an L in there, y'all. I corrected it last night on something else. Has everybody got this as much as they want of it? Okay, let's go on. The awareness of self in the white global collective as a white genetic mutant. Anybody know why they would be called mutants? What? Anybody? One of the things that you need to do, we need to do, is to connect the different people that we have studied or read or been told about.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of this mutant thing, who would be a person that you would go to in terms of their work? Who do you think? That's it. Say it louder.
Shake hands to Jill.
Okay. Who talks about the development of white people over 20,000 years of mutation that was necessary in the Caucasus and that whole area. Is everybody with me? So yeah, they came about as a result of mutation. Okay? Mutation is like abnormal, y'all. Okay, it's moving away from normal. Okay? And it's mutation from what is normal, what is healthy. At any rate, she says white genetic mutant population and the subsequent conscious and unconscious determination to survive as a global minority. As a global minority. When survive as that. In order to do that, what did they have to do? It became the underlying law that determined the evolution of the new global white supremacy system / culture. That's how that system comes about. That's her thesis. That's what she says. So you can explain everything that way. Next one. Now, she's talking about what she sees as the task of the discipline she's been trained in. That she is telling you needs to be reworked. Psychiatry's task is to demonstrate that the white supremacy system, now again, let me go back. Psychiatry's task, y'all, you think that's what she was taught in school when she was trained in psychiatry? I don't think so. Okay? And I don't think that we need to be thinking in terms of good students in good, white or white-black universities. I don't think that's how we need to be thinking. Why? Why shouldn't we be thinking like that?
You're duped before you started to think that way.
Say it again?
I said because you're duped before you started to think that way. You
All right.
buy into the European system of hierarchy with that educational process means.
What are we in? We. What are we involved in? What should we be involved in? Anybody?
Our own systems of thought.
Say it again?
Our own systems of thought.
Okay, what's our reality? See, these are words and stuff. What's our reality right now? War. When you're at war, what should you be trained to be?
A warrior.
Soldier.
And identifying.
Warrior.
Strategies.
You know what she says about them?
Yeah. About
She says they're thinking, kill or be killed. We got problems with that. But she's saying because of this, they're like, for our survival, we got to create this monstrous system in order to live. So they know they're at war. You see what I'm saying? They're declaring war, and we don't know that war has been declared against us. Yes?
Well, if we study the European, you would know that they are warlocks, and they have been warlocks. They've had the 1,000-year war all in Europe, so there's a lot of problems with that. Number two, the environment, no vitamin D for the body. So a lot of things that makes them inferior. And if we studied their history, then we would understand them more so.
Well, that's why I spent a lot of time doing that. Thank you very much in the book Urugu. And I think also Baba Jetty Dr. Jacob Carruthers. He's doing that. He's looking at their thought process. And Job does that as well in terms of when he talks about the Northern Cradle. He's talking about the very things that you talk about is what they came out of and then how it influenced how they think and how they relate to the environment, okay? We got to know, what is Dr. Welsing saying? She's saying we got to study our enemy and identify it as an enemy. I think we're still looking at, well, they're the good people, some of them who said some good things, and really all I need to do is kind of tweak their thing a little bit, right? And make sure they don't
Join them and work together.
yeah, work together, but also we just don't want them to beat up on us. We don't want them to kill our children. Which is very true. How do you stop somebody from killing your children? I mean, God, I hope you're in your house and somebody coming after your children, what you gonna do?
Take them out.
Come on. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Also, they took the worst out of Europe, put them all on the ships, all the drunkards, all the mentally ill, the prostitutes, all thrown on the ships and toodaloo to America, the new world, we don't want you.
Okay.
So this is what we were stuck with.
Okay. Well, the other thing is, because I'm going to take you there, I'm going to take us all there, is, are we American? No. Is that what you want to be, however? No. You might say, oh no, no, I'm not, but really, I'm hoping, one day. You know what she says? She says, we're not American. I say, we don't need to want to be American. And then she says, we are the victims of Americans. Now, why is she saying something so, because she's saying we've got to know our reality, y'all. That's what her whole thing is about. What were you going to say, Haru?
I was just going to add on, as we learned in our study class, African American Critical Thinking study class, you can pick any year since they've been known to exist, any year.
That's right.
And they've been at war with themselves or someone else.
That's right.
They're warlocks.
That's
Every
right.
single year.
That's right. They thrive on what they need war, and that's what Baba Jetty explains, is that it's a mentality in terms of conflict that they need. That's in their worldview. So does Job talks about the same thing. Okay, let's keep reading here. So the task of psychiatry is what? To demonstrate that you really can't be mentally healthy in their environment. Now, her stuff is so bold, y'all. She's defining mental health in a way that her teachers did not, they wouldn't agree with. They didn't teach her that. Where does she get it from? She gets it from being an African woman. Okay? Under the threat of white supremacy. That's where she gets it from. And that's what we have to do, is to be able to study from that perspective. So when we talk about African-centered perspective, don't just use that as words. It means that before you make a judgment about something, you're going to say it's good or bad, you need to ask yourself a question about it. And this is what the children at Ahab know to ask. Anybody know what the question is? I guess nobody here would know. Yes, Mama Isato.
Is it good for African people?
Is it good for African people? That's the critical question to ask of anything. Anything. Before you do it or before you are able to say it's good or bad. That doesn't mean you won't do some things that are not necessarily good. But you'll know, if I'm going to ask that question, this thing ain't good for my people. Okay? She is asking us to think critically in that way. And then we're going to get in remind me, because I want to get to where she talks about how we think. Okay, that's very important, and I won't remember, so you got to remind me. Okay, so it's unable to produce an environment in which mental health can evolve and flourish. You cannot be mentally healthy in that system according to their rules, functioning with their rules. Therefore, the power system needs to be abandoned. She says it's got to be abandoned. So psychiatry really would say to you, if it's her kind of psychiatry, which is counter-racist psychiatry, do away with the white Western supremacy system. Do away with it. Check that out. She's saying psychiatry will tell you to do that if you do it the right way. Let's go with the next one. She is going to offer another definition of mental health. Y'all? And that's what we got to do. We got to have our own definitions. The brother elder over there was talking about. Once you define it, then you control it. And we've been working with their definitions. And we've been working with their definitions to a large degree, because those of us who go through the academy, we think we're learning this is the right way. This is the smartest way. So then we come out and then we teach. And we teaching the children and we teaching the adults and we teaching our people. But what are we teaching? We're teaching the definitions that we were taught in the white supremacy system. So what I haven't said yet is what she does practically with all of this. And practically speaking, she was a healer. And she was healing every one of our people that she could possibly get near. And you know what she was healing them to do? We tend to think about healers as people who make you feel better. You're in pain, discomfort, you're not happy, but a healer is somebody that makes you feel better, right? That ain't what she did. I know what she was doing. You know what she was doing? She was helping us to confront our fear. That's what she saw, was the necessity. And you know what? It is very much the necessity right now. And you got to look at the chapter, which I'm going to move to, on black fear. Okay? Which is getting us to confront that fear. So then you can neutralize it if you can confront it and understand it, so that we could get to the next step. What's the next step? You confront the fear. Why did we need to confront fear? Why do we need to confront our fear of this whole thing? What do you do after that? Action? What kind? Exactly. What kind? What's the action? There is a very specific action that she did all the time and that she told us we had to do. It's even in the title of one of her things. What's the action? What's the action, y'all? Interesting that I'm not getting a lot of answers on this, because that's part of the problem. We cannot move to the level of the action. You know what the action is? What's the action?
Fight.
Fight. Good. Fight. Yes, fight. What's a word that she uses over and over again? Hint. Starts with a C. Anybody? Starts with a C.
Confrontation.
Thank you, Jay.
I didn't want to say it, but
I know.
okay. Yeah.
Confrontation, y'all. Okay, we've confronted our fear. We gotta then confront what?
The enemy.
The enemy. Come on. Confront the system, racism, white supremacy. Let's put it like that. We gotta confront it. You gotta confront it. Let me skip where I wasn't going yet, okay? Because it flows here. What do you think is going to happen when you confront it? Can you name anybody else who has confronted racism, white supremacy? Anybody? Not anybody, but who said Malcolm X? Excellent answer. Good answer. Who? Good answer. Let's stop right there. We could name more. Okay. Now no, better answer would be Malcolm. Better answer is Medgar Evers. What about Martin Luther King? I wouldn't include him as confronting the system of white supremacy. Not that I don't like a lot of what he wrote, James Baldwin. I don't see him as confronting the system of white supremacy. These other people they confronted, what happened to them?
They got killed.
They were killed. Dr. Welsing is saying we got to be prepared for that. That's one of the scariest, hardest things for us to hear, but she is talking turkey, y'all. She's not playing. She's talking for real. That you got to deal mentally, emotionally with the possibility, the strong possibility, right? That if you confront that system, that you may die. But let me ask you this. When you're at war and you go into battle, now I haven't been in the military. Any brothers here been in the military? I don't think so, because you all are too young, most of you. I know one who has been. If they go into battle, right? What might happen to them? It could be killed. Okay?
Captured.
That is what she's talking about, is mentally, emotionally, psychologically. You have to be prepared to be, she has one chapter where she says, every black man needs to be raised to be a warrior soldier. Now, she's not doing rhetoric. She don't do that. She does for real. So that what gets in the way of that is black fear. Black fear on the part of the men, of the children, on the part of the mothers and the women who want to protect their sons. That's a natural thing, right?
Yes.
But guess what? We're not living in a natural environment. We're not living in a natural environment. We're not living in good times. We're not living as it was in Africa. You understand? And so our recognition has got to be, we are being warred against. If we want to be at war, then it's going to take all of this stuff. So, mental health is defined by her. In counter-racist psychiatry, patterns of logic, thought, speech, action, emotional response, and perception consciously produced by the victims of white supremacy racism with the objective of eradicating racism. That's mental health for her. She's got more too. Let's go to the next one. I'll see what I have here. But mental illness, submission to and cooperation with victimization and oppression are signs of individual or group mental illness or self-negation. That's mental illness for her. So, if you are really thinking from an African-centered perspective and you are truly a warrior and you truly understand what our situation is, that is what time it is, then you don't just take a discipline as it is taught to you, coming out of eugenics and all of this stuff, coming out of the system of white supremacy. You have to redefine what that is. And so a lot of the work, and you look into and listen to now John Henry Clarke, a lot of what he was saying, he's doing that. He's getting us to think with our own brains, in our own interest. And he's redefining the terms which will allow us to, what do we call it, reshape the playing field. We got to reshape that, y'all. Okay? We got to make it so we are an enemy to them. An active one. Okay? A threat beyond the fact of our genetics. You see what I'm saying? And that's what she's talking about as well. And I'll skip ahead to when she does talk about black fear. Because she says that it's pervasive, black fear is pervasive, and that it is getting in the way of our thinking, and that we are not thinking strategically. And it allows us to complain, which I would say protest. It allows us, what word does she use? Not whine, but to do all of that. You know, because we know we're hurting. We know the system isn't good for black people. And so we say that, and we may even organize some things about it. But it is not, the fear is getting in the way of us thinking towards problem solving, she says, towards developing a strategy. And that's what I say, is that it has, Garvey used this word, de-visioned us. I think the academy does that it takes the vision out of it. And so now the leadership that we have, so-called, because we don't have bona fide leaders, does not have vision. And I say that anybody, me, gets up in front of you and talks, or anybody who says that they're, 9 o'clock says, professes to be a leader of any kind, you ask them, what's your vision? What is your vision for African people? What is victory? What does a victory look like? And I'm not saying to challenge what they say necessarily, but even if they have an answer, then at least you can work with that. You might say, oh, good. Then how are we going to make that happen? Okay? But if they don't have that answer, you can't be a leader and you don't have a vision of something beyond white power. And the fear has gotten in the way of us doing that. And there's one place where I might have the quote up there, but what, we talk about black liberation, but if we really want black liberation, the reason has to be because we have confidence in who we are. We got a problem with self-confidence. We have a problem with self-respect. She sees these as results of racism, white supremacy. We got to work on that. And we're not going to be able to do that as long as we don't recognize that as the enemy and prepare ourselves to neutralize it. Got it? So what a healer would do in that context is prepare us to neutralize it. You know what it means to neutralize an enemy, y'all? Let's go on. Next. She talks about decoding the system. Decoding white culture. Decoding the white supremacy system. I have given myself the culture in which I find myself, wait, okay, I did something wrong here. And I don't know what it is, but she talks about the culture in which she finds herself in time and space. Okay? So let's just start with that. That culture is the dominating global power system and culture of white supremacy, racism. This decoding, she probably said she has given herself the task of decoding the culture that she finds herself in, right? This decoding amounts to examining the intricate pattern pieces underlying the culture and power system. Only by doing so, or by so doing, is it possible to see where we are going in the existing dense white fog. By the way, she would do that a lot. I like the way she talked, the way she would think. But that's where we're in right now. We're in a white fog. And it affects impacts on the way we think about how to organize, what we should be organizing about, what our objective is. We have no black agenda. I'm going to repeat that. We have no black agenda. An agenda is something, tells you what to do. And we know what we mean when we say that politically, right? But we don't have that. Don't you think it's time that we did? Garvey had one. And he was doing his organizing in the 1920s and earlier. I mean, come on, y'all. What happened? Next. The oppression of black people means that there is no black self-determination. I'm going to repeat that again. We talk about self-determination. We might mean, okay, let's use our own language. Let's, what do we say? Wear African clothes or do something. Even our schools, we might want a black school. All of that, that's nice. That's good. But she's saying there can't be real self-determination. Black self-determination in what? As long as you are still in what? The system of white supremacy. You can't have black self-determination. It also means that there can be no true and functional black self-respect. Again, you can't have real black self-respect. We can't have self-respect. We can't have respect in ourselves as a group, as a race, as long as we're in the system of white supremacy. So the words that we have are not enough, y'all. It's not even enough for us to have pictures on the wall in our homes that are black. It's good. It's better than having white pictures. But we need to think beyond that. We need to get serious. Why? Because we want to be at war. We are now being warred against. Because there is an enemy that is trying to kill us. And they're doing it. And they're doing it through all kinds of means, including the vaccines and the sterilization, but everything other kind of way, the menticide, all of it, right? And they are killing our children on the street, the police, and she has a chapter which you need to read called Justifiable Homicide. And explains exactly what's happening now. There was a hand up. Yeah, Haru.
That quote reminds me of how you said she was using physics.
Yes,
like
good.
Things can occupy the same space at the same time.
Good, I like that.
And without a system of our own, we can't have self-determination or self-respect.
Good.
Because we're still within a system that does not allow us to be self-determined.
Excellent thinking, excellent point. Is that she talks about energy systems, and she's talking about white supremacy as a system, as an energy system. So with us in that system, we can only function according to the laws of that system. And if it's white supremacy system, then that means the negation of blackness. That's an excellent point. Let's see. Low levels of functional self-respect imply that the self-image and self-concept are more negative than positive. When something is, again, with the energy stuff and the physics, if it's more negative than positive, that it means it can't impact. You got that? Impact. What does that sound like to you? To impact something is to have what? Is to have? Come on. A word. If you can impact something, you got to have what? Power, y'all. This whole thing is about power. She's talking about power. We have difficulty thinking in terms of power. I think it comes back to the black fear thing. Okay? Very important. Everything has got to be about power. Again, everything is about power. Everything is political, y'all. Everything is political. Political is about power relationships. We have to think like that. She was trying to get us into another kind of thought way, so to speak. And I'm not feeling it. I got a few people, and some young people, I only work with young people, by the way, who, you know, they're there, right? But for most part, we ain't thinking in terms of power. And I think that that only comes from fear. I also think that that comes from these, I call them, I'm going off here now, this is important, because it relates. I call them comfort zones. We actually have become, how many people are familiar with the term ma'afa? Okay, that's almost everybody, but that's really the destruction of us, right? Okay, that started, well, way back in the day. So we could start with the Arabs and stuff, but them coming over and attacking us and just coming into Africa and stealing us and all of that, and then everything that has happened since, that's ma'afa. Got it? Okay. Something which is destroying you, killing those you love in all these different ways. How can you be comfortable in that? Now, you know what? That's a form of insanity. And that's where we're at, y'all. And what happens is you have these different pockets or comfort zones within that. So guess what? We go to school. We go way up there and you get these degrees. And you know what? That gives you a certain kind of comfort. But what you're really doing, you're still in that thing. Okay? You might go to church. You get some comfort. And that kind of keeps you from, I don't have to confront because I got my comfort thing right here. You go into an African spiritual tradition. And you do what they tell you to do. You do your rituals. You make your sacrifices. You're kind of comfortable. We have to, you might go into the military under their control, obviously, right? But it becomes a comfort zone because you don't have to push yourself to fight. You don't have to push yourself to take on or confront the system of white supremacy. You got it? So when we think that somehow we can be here and be comfortable, that is mental illness. Let me go on. Or have some degree of self-determination or self-whatever and so forth.
Integration is that.
That's, hey, what does that do? What does that do? And let me do a little fighting here or whatever it's going to be. And that's okay because it's good, but that's my role. That's what I do. So what does it do when you get an integrated president who is seen as black? No, I'm asking, what does it do? What does it do? Does it
Make you feel like you're a part of it.
makes you feel you're a part of it and that, yeah, this thing can work? Okay? So it becomes a danger in that sense. You see what I'm saying? So you got to look at, okay, what are the things that make us feel more comfortable here? And identify ourselves as American. Watch that. They imply that the self-image is more negative than positive. To have a negative impact on the total environment is a manifestation of behavioral powerlessness. You got that? So we're really powerless because we got negative impact. We can't do anything, really. You're not changing the system, right? You with me? You're not with me?
That's because we don't understand that the system is the problem.
We've been shaped and molded by that total environment into a functional inferior. a functional inferior. And what you have to do, we won't have time today, is to go and look at the book and see where she talks about the process of inferiorization. Okay? And what it means to be functionally inferior. And that's what this system does to us, to our children. To our children. She has a whole chapter on that. The process of that. Okay. Okay. Neutralizing the impact of white supremacy. Again, remember that word, neutralizing. Every black person in the healing profession should master an understanding of the etiologic. That's the causal. Okay. Just what causes. That's what we're looking at. Okay. Chain that leads to black inferiorization. Every healer that is black should want to understand, what is that process? How does it work? Where does it come from? Okay? And pass on this knowledge to their black patients, enabling them to neutralize the impact of white supremacy on their lives and achieve a development of their black genetic potential. She believes in our black genetic potential. Do we? Do we believe in that? You see? That has to be the reality. It has to be more than a potential. We have to manifest it. And the way you do that is by confronting the system. And by the way, which I have not said, the only way we can do that is to organize to do that. Okay, it might sound here like you're talking a lot about you personally doing that. Okay, confronting and preparing yourself to confront. We're going to have what? What is the organization that confronts the enemy? What do you call that?
Army.
The army. And I'm saying every African person, to be born African, has to understand that they were born into an army. Every African person, every black person should see themselves as part of an army. That's a whole different way of thinking. And so when we raise our children, the first thing that we say to them should be that they have to see themselves as part of this army. Where are we at? Enabling them to neutralize the impact of white supremacy on their lives and achieve a development of their black genetic potential and constitutional potential. What does she say? What's her estimation of that potential? Anybody reading? She says, second to none. Second to none. Your genetic potential is, and your constitutional potential is second to none. Let's go to the next one. Dr. Welsing argues that our brains have been short-circuited. This is, I won't go do a whole thing on black fear, which I was going to do. This will be enough right here. She talks about the brain computer, and she talks about the circuit. And she's saying that ours have been short-circuited. By what? Fear. This is what I believe. I also believe that we are in a state of collective depression, which keeps us from being visionary. It keeps us from seeing beyond them. But you all got to be able to do what we have to be able to do as a race, as a people, as warriors in training. We have to be able to envision a world without white people.
Who's going to lead us?
What'd you say?
Who's going to lead us? Who's going to lead us?
Ah, good. Very good. Because that she raises that. She raises that exactly. It's like we look to them for everything. She talks about dependency. I don't know if it's in there, but she talks about that. That's exactly right. Whoever said that. And the reason we have to be able to envision that world is because what in the world are we fighting for? You see, it's been so long since we even, in fact, I just heard a lecture of Nana Clark where he says, we've been out of power for so long that we've forgotten what power is. And so that's what we have to, relearn. But, we fight in this system. It's a bad system, all of that. What is our system going to look like? Okay? And then once we have that, that gives you, to me, it gives me the vision for what I'm working for. I got to get this thing out of the way so that then I can build what's supposed to be. We're the people of Ma'at, y'all. It's our job to bring harmony to the universe. And harmony doesn't mean that we got to live with white people. No. They won't even be an issue. Okay? But that's a whole nother. So, therefore, you've got to have a vision beyond this thing. And then know what Aikwe Arma said we got to do, which is to destroy the destroyers. And you're destroying the destroyers so that you can get to the creative purpose of our, I think, Dr. McIntosh, our existence, or whatever it is that he says, right?
The way.
We getting back to the way. You got to, that's the reason we got to do all of this stuff, right? Which is the way to live properly. Okay, so we've been short-circuited by fear. We reject the conscious recognition of white supremacy. We don't want to know that it's there, that it exists. So what do? We let the racist define racism. We do that. So sometimes they even define Pan-Africanism as racism. Check that out. They'll do all of that because you can do anything with words. And we just go for it. Or we spend all this time arguing against them. What? Come on. You're going to let your enemy engage you in this? They do that to you.
At college all the time.
Yeah, Dr. Kanye's here. You know, when you're in these white universities, that's what they do. That's their job. Okay, but we can't use all our energy there, fighting them. There is a disturbance in problem perception. She's saying because of black fear. There is no commitment by blacks to analyze the problem of white supremacy comprehensively. Remember, that's how we started out. We need an overall analysis or something that will give us a systematic analysis. Blacks are without a perception or analysis of racism or of a scientific counter-racism. Next one, I'm going to have to move fast. We are witnessing a collective black floundering, that should be L there, and an ideological vacuum and disorientation. They keep us off like this, okay? Blacks can pretend as a diversionary thought strategy that the real struggle exists between imagined classes. Who is that? That's a Marxist. That's what they're going to tell you. So then all this thing is on the classes, which he said doesn't even exist in white people because classes, among black people, because classes are about power. They are power relationships and we ain't got no power in the system, so we don't have no classes. Okay, I love it, right? Or between black males and females. How much time do we spend doing that? And then you get the whole, what I call death style people in terms of saying homosexuality. That's putting the males against the females, and that ain't making for the children. How you gonna have the children? You see what I'm saying? All of these things are diversionary. Okay? And we're taking them on like, this should be our ideology? Come on. The root of black fear, the total black collectives in the U.S. has yet to confront consciously the mind-blowing logic and thought-distorting shock and fear that set in following the assassinations of practically all courageous black male leaders. Next one. Since all of these deliberate deaths have occurred, there has been a profound disinclination, means people don't want to do this, by surviving blacks to confront the awesome and murderous reality of white supremacy directly. The struggle for justice and true black power is perceived through a glass darkly, like how she does stuff, and not face to face because there is overwhelming fear. We have to face the fear. I think this next quote, do the next one, James. I think this is the one. No, that's not the
Next
one.
one?
There is never a consistent motion toward, yeah, let's do the next one. Yeah, listen to this. Listen to, she was funny too, you know. In keeping with this goal, that is of overcoming black fear, I recommend to the Black collective that we need not have any conferences. Let me repeat that. We need not have any conferences other than to announce the existence of our fear of white supremacy and to share with one another all possible solutions for overcoming these fears. Got it? Okay.
That deserves an applause.
Let's stop with this one.
That's it?
Yeah, I want to go to the other one.
Oh, okay.
Okay, what I'm going to do, yeah, I'm going to end with, I'm going to go quickly through a PowerPoint that I've done because I want us to end with, where is it going? Where do I say it's going? Where was she talking about going? And connect her with this African sovereignty movement that I am announcing and part of and so forth. I see her as the brain of black power. And I think that we need to think in terms of power and that we don't do that enough, that we don't understand it, and we don't talk about it, okay? She did. I call her Cool Fire. Anybody who knew her. Next one. The fundamental power concern in the white supremacy system culture is white genetic survival through white supremacy domination. We have heard that. We know that. By now, you should know that by heart. I'm saying that this is, and she does have this somewhere, we need to know what the real game is. And the real game is the power game. Next one. The Crest theory helps us to understand that in the white supremacy system, all areas of people activity are used for the achievement of power. All areas of people activity, and some people could just say them all out, I think it's 9 of them, are used for their achievement of power.
You want me to say them?
That's what we didn't know. Oh. That's okay.
Okay.
Maybe after.
Yeah.
Race power, he's saying them over there.
Okay.
Well, say them. Say it.
Economics, education, entertainment. Law, labor, and politics, war, religion, and sex.
Wow. I mean,
And health in there.
they're good. Okay.
You have to say it again, please.
You want to hear it again?
Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, religion, politics, sex, and war.
There you go.
Okay, and then Heru adds health, but she did 9, and Neely Fuller
Does 9.
does 9. Okay. Race power, race power, race power. Another word that we don't use is race. Another concept we don't use is race, but it used to be used. We will use it. It is the reality that shapes our lives. And all war with this system is about race, y'all. Do not be afraid of race. Now you're going to let the racists say in academia that there's no such thing as race. Why do you think they're saying that? They're saying it, they say, because, oh, that was so bad, that scientific racism, and we need to get away from that, so now we know there's no such thing as race. Huh? Why do you think they're saying it? Why? Because that's the most powerful thing that we have, is our racial identification.
Playing the race card.
Thank you. All right, all right. We need to use race, y'all. That they come out inferior with that one, right? We come out superior with that. Did I read that one already? Yeah. Oh no, race power is the. We must learn to play the real game, the power game. What is it called?
War.
War. Really be at war, okay? Next one. The white collective understands black power. They understand it. Black genetic superiority, melanin-dominant people are the overwhelming majority of the world's people. White powerlessness. I'm finishing right now. White genetic inferiority, inadequacy, only 8% of the world suffer from this affliction. It's an affliction. It's a disease. Next. Yorugu. recognizes that their genetic inadequacy implies their death. That's what it implies. They're going to die. Their non-humanness. You got Hugh. You got that play on that, right? Places them outside of the human family. This understanding, this knowledge produces intense fear of genetic annihilation and a constant state of insecurity and anxiety. Homelessness. They're not at home anywhere. Disharmony. Remember about Yurugu. Yurugu it's in the nature of Yurugu to destroy, right? That's all it knew, right? Next. The response on the part of the white collective is to create a system in which they substitute racial domination for genetic power. Racial domination for genetic power, okay? A system in which they become superior and which is focused on destroying black power, thereby guaranteeing their own survival, since black power is the greatest threat to white survival. Next one. We got to understand the root cause of racism. Our lack of understanding of the fundamental basis of the system of white supremacy causes us to accept the position of inferiority that it imposes. Believing in their superiority necessarily makes us functionally inferior. This devastating belief creates black fear. The white collective has, through the defensive construct of white supremacy, successfully transferred their fear to us. Next one. If we do not, this is her quote I love. If we do not have confidence in our ability to make independent black observations, black analyses, and black plans for black action, why should we talk about or seek black liberation? Got that one? For us to, okay, now, what I'm doing is connecting her with Marcus Mosiah Garvey and looking at what he did. You talk about a psychotherapist or a psychologist or whatever they call him. Garvey was supreme. And read a book, I call it the Green Book, by Amos. Came out after Black Power, after Blueprint.
Garveyism and the New African World Order?
That one. African-centered consciousness in the New World Order. Garveyism in the age of globalism. Get that book, okay? For us to examine ourselves as a people, we will find more traitors than leaders, because nearly everyone who tries to lead the race at this time does so by first establishing himself as the pet of some philanthropist. Who was he talking about? Okay. Of another race, to whom he will go and debase his race in the worst form, humiliate his manhood, and thereby win the sympathy of the great benefactor, who will dictate to him what he should do in leadership of the Negro race. These leaders tell us how good Mr. So-and-so is, how many good friends we have in the opposite race, and that if we leave everything to them, all will work out well. This is Marcus Garvey writing in 1925, and I'm saying that he is a symbol of fearless black manhood. Next one. Marcus Mosiah Garvey, antidote to black fear. Black fear must be displaced with black self-love. He didn't say this, he did say this. Black self-confidence and black self-respect. That's what Garvey called for. When we are dominated by the system of white supremacy and believe in our own inferiority, not only do we fear white power, but that fear turns into fear of black power. And if we had more time, we'd talk about that. But it has to do with the fact that when you are in power, then you have responsibility and you are accountable. And a big responsibility. And Donna Clark asked the question, she said, ask every leader, every teacher, every policy maker, how will my people stay on this earth? And he goes through a whole list of them. How will they be educated? How will they be defended? How will they be fed? These are the questions that should be asked of the people who are putting themselves as a leader. That's responsibility, y'all. Okay, next. Garvey was the most successful leader of the black masses that we have had before or since. He healed black people with race pride and a race-first ideology. He said that we must be a sovereign people and love ourselves. Black leadership made up of those who believed in black inferiority and white superiority were so threatened by Garvey's call for black independence that they band together and went to the white boy to get rid of him. Now that happened. And that's one of the things that well, keep going. Next, yeah. The African black male is the vehicle of black genetic power. He is therefore perceived as the greatest threat to white genetic survival. He must be pacified and weakened. He must be separated from the African black female through whom the black race is regenerated. In essence, the black male must be degendered, rendered ineffective and powerless as a male. This is what Welsing is saying. Next one. Black male bisexuality and homosexuality has been used by the white collective in its effort to survive genetically. Got that? In their effort to survive, okay, they are promoting that. And we can see it. In the time when she was writing this, it wasn't even like it is now. She was telling us that this would happen. To survive genetically in a world dominated by colored people, and black acceptance of this imposition does not solve the major problem of our oppression, but only further retards its ultimate solution. Next one. Since whites are alienated from their genetic status, they defensively cause non-whites to be alienated from their genetic status as well. That's what they're doing through that promotion of those death styles, okay? This should put the victims of such a dynamic, black people, on the alert so that they efficiently and effectively can counter this destructive assault against the appreciation of their own total genetic status. Next one. Okay, so she's saying, talking about the threat of black genetic annihilation and that our children should be protected, and what black psychiatrists, their posture towards homosexuality should be. She said our task is to treat and prevent its continuing and increasing occurrence. Next one. Black males must collectively face the horrendous presence of white males and conquer the accompanying fear engendered by this act. After the white male is faced, he must be resisted steadfastly and fought. If he continues to wage war on black people, which it looks like he will do, he has done historically. Next one. Black women must learn to rear sons who will learn from the cradle that their major function as men is not to get a good job and a fine car, but to defend, protect, and support their people in that order, even should death be the consequence. Understand that she is talking about being in a state of war. So she's not talking about everything is everything, which we tend to look at. Oh, we want our children to be happy. We want them to have all these privileges and so forth. May be very natural, but not in this state, y'all. Okay, next one. Okay, we're going to skip. I wish we didn't have to. She has a chapter called The Neurochemical Basis for Evil. You need to look at that chapter, okay? And what she's countering with that is melanin, which she says is the neurochemical basis for soul. She said that she posited this, she presented this to the National Medical Association, James, Dr. McIntosh. Yes. I want you to just, later you can say, she gave this paper to the NMA. Now that's the Black Association of Doctors, of medical people. And you think they're revolutionary? No. So her presenting this paper to them in 1972, they must have been like, oh my God, okay? Melanin, the neurochemical basis for soul. I posited melanin as a possible neurotransmitter and the skin melanocytes as the foundation of the sixth sense, the basis for knowledge of the unseen, including a deeper knowledge of what is bad. Just keep going. And then, I'm not going to go through all this, but this is something that I have used extensively. There's a book by Leonard Barrett called Soul Force. It's out of print, but if you can get it, go online, you might be able to get it. But he talks about soul and soul force and talks about this special quality that black people have that has enabled us to do what we have done. And I'm saying we need to use that same thing, that soul force, to go ahead and forge this movement of the African sovereignty movement and to confront the system of white supremacy and to be at war. that we need to use it to fight with. Let's go ahead, James. Is that the next one?
Yeah.
Soul Force describes the racial inheritance of the New World African. The symbol of power that emerged in the consciousness of Africans in the diaspora is blackness. Life force or life power is the most important concept found in all Africa. The supreme value of life is to live robustly, strongly. Anything that diminishes this life force is considered dangerous. Now, I put that there, and I use this to say that's how we need to see the system of white supremacy. You understand? That it seeks to diminish our life force because white people are threatened by our life force because they think that implies their genetic annihilation. You see how it works, y'all? I'm trying to give you the logic of all of this. Is this the next one? Next one. Now, let's see melanin, Baba Kobe Cambone. In a book, I think this is in African Personality in America, talks about melanin. Melanin dominance constitutes a primary aspect of the biogenetic basis of the African personality system. So he links melanin to the African personality, and I won't go into more of that here, but I'm trying to show you kind of the support and the reasoning for her bringing melanin into this discussion. You see, which before that you didn't hear that kind of thing, and it's still considered. I'm still getting people saying, "Oh, you know, I don't believe in that melanin, whatever." Okay, but it's clearly something that we need to be looking into. Okay, and there's a book, The Science of Melanin, by Tim Moore. The Science of Melanin, very, very accessible, easy to read, and so forth. But he's a neuropsychologist, I think that's the term. So he deals with the brain. Let's go ahead. And this is Cambone again, who talks about something called African self-extension orientation, which is really spirituality, and he's connecting spirituality with melanin. So now let's keep going and look at what Dr. Welsing says. There's the book, Tim Moore, keep going. Okay, now she talks about evil. Evil as the antithesis of soul. So you see these two things she's countering here. Evil and soul. And she defines evil as being that which is against life. Again, that which is against life. What culture is that? That's clearly white Western culture, you see? As the antithesis of soul. I relate soul, that's the other thing, us, to order, spirituality, and the affirmation of life. You see what she does here, okay? I equate evil with chaos, destruction, especially the destruction of life. That's Yorugu. Next one. The absence of melanin obstructs the nervous system's ability to tune into the total spectrum of the frequencies of the universe. I'm going to skip down. She says it then becomes incumbent, I mean, you got to do it, upon those possessing melanin to counteract evil. That's what we have to do, because we are these special people on earth and in the world. African people, the original people. Ain't nobody can really argue with that one, okay? To address this obsession with mass death, they are obsessed with mass death and the degradation of human life. That is the nature of white Western culture, okay? In the hopes of countering it is to affirm the dignity of human beings and the universe. So she's saying that's our job, and that's how we affirm that dignity. Next one. Now I want to show you quickly, I was explaining the term ma'afa, but I want to add to that the way people ordinarily know it. What I found out later was that I was looking for a term in an African language. So I got Kiswahili because of the people working with me in the Department of African Studies at Hunter. They taught Kiswahili, okay, Black and Puerto Rican Studies at Hunter. And that's what I got. I said a term for great disaster. That's what I wanted, and so I introduced that. However, I was to find out later, the sister from, where's she from? From Senegal, I think, Koumba, said, how did you know to use this term ma'afa? I said, I don't know what you mean. I mean, I used it because I needed something, and, you know. She said, but in my language, Bamana, it is, Ma'a is the divinity of human beingness. Human beingness, hue, color. Fa is to kill. So Ma'afa is to kill or destroy humanity. I was like blown away, but that's the ancestors working, y'all. Okay? So let's go on. Now, let me just say that the reason I put that up there was because remember what Dr. Welsing was just talking about when we interrupted that. She was talking about evil. She was talking about evil as being against life, right? And she was talking about our responsibility in terms of fighting evil. You got that? White supremacy is the greatest known evil on earth. This is a quote from Nana Welsing. To ignore evil is to participate in evil. Look at page 234. Look at it. Again, to ignore evil is to participate in evil. To the extent that we do not fight it, we are participating in it. You got that?
Ma'afa thing again?
Ma'afa?
Yeah.
Go back.
You want to say it again? Sure.
Yeah, that's dope.
There it is. Ma'a, the divinity of human beingness. Fa, to kill. Ma'afa, to kill, destroy humanity. That's in the Bamana language. Okay? Next one. And it is incumbent upon those possessing melanin to counteract evil. She's telling us that is our job to do. That's what we have to do. That's what we're put here to do. That is our work. We're not doing that. We are failing, and we're participating in the evil and the system of white supremacy. Okay? And it's not enough just to protest. What do we have to do? Does anybody, what do you learn from this? What do we have to do with regard to the system of white supremacy?
Impact.
We have to develop our own systems.
Confront.
What are the systems after survival?
Who said confront? Thank you. And how do we confront it? What do you call it when you confront an enemy? War. Why are we afraid to say that? That's what she's talking about. We need to be at war. We are being warred against. That's how we confront it. Okay? So we should be organizing ourselves for war. We should be organizing ourselves for war. We should be organizing ourselves for war. So you're not taping anymore? Oh. Next one. The global, okay, now I'm getting into African sovereignty. A lot of people say, well, what do you mean by sovereignty? Well, I'm going to let you know what I mean by it, and that's the way we got to go. The global white collective is inherently evil. Its evilness is the result of its powerlessness. Again, its evilness is the result of its powerlessness, okay? So it's this compensatory thing for the powerlessness, right? Its extreme minority status, lack of melanin, and so forth. Black power and spirituality. It lacks all that. It lacks that, y'all. The white supremacy system, which is a defense mechanism, right, necessary for white genetic survival, creates the illusion of white power over black. Creates the illusion of white power over black. But it is consummate evil. That means the epitome of evil. Essentially evil. That's what white supremacy system is. Racism, white supremacy is consummate evil. The epitome of evil. I want you to feel that. I want you to think like that. So you know it's your job to fight against the evil. Now, with all of this, we haven't talked about the fact that you can't do it alone. We've got to organize to do this. Okay? Garvey was an organizer. He organized people into the UNIA, which is meeting right now, which I was wondering why they weren't here. Okay? Where are we at? We read this already, didn't we?
Slide.
Okay. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. African sovereignty is the organization of that army, okay, which is seeking absolute power. That's what we want. We don't want a piece of this and a little of that, and question the police on that one, and, a few more jobs here, and that kind of thing. That's not what we want. I don't even use the word empowerment, because that assumes a system within which you are empowered. I'm talking about power, you all. And I'm not going to use any words that keep me from saying power. Talk power. Not empowerment, but power. Got it? Raw power is what we need. Did I read that already? I read all of that. Okay. Now, here's talking about African sovereignty. So you want to know what it is? This is what it is. Is the consolidation of black power. The consolidation of black power. The consolidation of black power. Where? Where? Where?
Everywhere.
Black power everywhere, throughout the world. Thank you. That means you're thinking it and feeling it, okay? And that's what I have to do, is get this in your heart. Because all of this has got to come from the hearts of black people. Is that clear? And our minds have got to be thinking with our hearts, okay? The consolidation of black power. It is African black self-love. Listen to this now, because wasn't Welsing talking about that? Wasn't Garvey talking about that? Self-definition. We define ourselves. Self-respect, self-determination, and self-rule. Self-rule. The concept and term of rule is very important. Rule. To rule. Okay? That's what sovereignty is about. To be sovereign, to reign. African sovereignty is the only construct capable of destroying evil. I'm going to repeat that. African sovereignty is the only construct capable of destroying evil. Now, Dr. Welsing has told us that this is what we've got to do. Didn't she tell us that? What did she say was the most evil thing on the face of the earth? Were you watching? Were you listening? Well, are you still remembering? Because you got to remember from one moment to the next. Loud. Don't be afraid to say it. White supremacy. The greatest evil on the face of the earth. I'm saying here, this is how we organize to destroy it. Destroying the destroyers. The greatest evil, the system of white supremacy. In African sovereignty, not only, now listen to this, does black power triumph over white power. That's one thing. Black power triumph over white power. But white power, which is the system of white supremacy, no longer exists. Let me say that again. If black power triumphs over white power, then the system of white supremacy no longer exists. Is that clear? Because the system of white supremacy is based on the reverse, which is white power over black. Is that clear to people? Yes. Okay. And the perpetrators, the doers of evil, they no longer exist. Remember what their fear is? Why are they afraid of us? Genetic annihilation. And we represent that to them. Okay? So, in a system which is based on black power and the triumph of black power over white power, they no longer exist. That's what they're afraid of. It doesn't allow for their continued existence. It allows for their genetic annihilation. You see, we're talking serious war. That's why they have to fight, because they understand the threat to their existence. We do not understand the threat of white supremacy and racism to our existence, y'all. We think we can still live. We think we can still live and get by with just some discomfort and occasional occurrences of quote-unquote discrimination. It ain't perfect, but it doesn't mean our death. That's what we think. And I'm saying something very different. Dr. Welsing is saying something very different. Marcus Garvey was saying something very different, because he was saying, unless we have our own government, we will not survive. We are in danger of being exterminated. He said that in 1920s. I don't know where I'm at, but I'm just going to keep going. The perpetuators of evil will no longer exist, since their continued survival depends on what? What does their continued survival depend on? White supremacy. That's what the system is set up for. That's what Neely Foley said. That's what Francis said, was that the system was so that they could survive. So if you do away with the system, got it?
Go on a generation.
Got it? Next one. So she is saying that black manhood, listen y'all, means warrior or soldier. Warrior or soldier. Warrior or soldier, not PhD, not CEO. That's what she say. Warrior or soldier against white supremacy. Embracing everything that the words warrior or soldier imply. Now that's plain. And if it isn't, it might be black fear getting in the way of it being plain, because it seemed real plain to me. Okay? And then Marcus Garvey, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey said what? Up, you mighty race. Come on. You can accomplish what you will. Will being the important word there. The will. The will is a power. It's that thing that makes things happen to have an impact on the world. We can do whatever it is that we will. This is what this man said. He said that we were a mighty race. Don't give up the concept of race. You understand, this mighty warrior woman, I see her as an African sovereignist, but she is my hero. Medasi for sitting here and being so patient.